Start.
Green card.
স্যার দেবো আমি শুরু করি
হ্যাঁ
মিস্টার বাসু ইউ হ্যাভ রিটন
No. Please, direct the question.
Okay.
Please.
Mr. Basu, you have written a good number of books on the Naxalite movement. You have written and you have edited also some others.
Arey.
These books are widely appreciated by the specialists as well as by the lay readers. What, according to you, gave the real momentum to the movement, pushing it in front of all other issues of that period? Context. I mean, what was the context which favored the birth of this
in
movement?
fact in India the communist movement had a long history and many glorious people's struggles of the workers, peasants were conducted, guided by the Communist Party. But unfortunately, the Communist Party leadership was confined to parliamentary elections. They were using the mass movements, mass organizations, mass agitations, all only with the sole, only goal of capturing power, governmental power, without disturbing the bourgeois capitalist framework of economy and politics and culture. So, very briefly speaking, the cadres and a large section of the sympathizers, supporters of the communist movement were unhappy. There was discontent in their minds. And a group of radical cadres, they began to criticize the Communist Party leadership. Their parliament-centric, election-centric, vote-centric, governmental power-centric activities and thoughts were criticized by the cadres. And one thing must be noted, that in the long history of the communist movement in India, two things were identified. One was by the radical cadres. On the one hand, they thought that this parliament-centric politics is revisionist, it should be rectified, and a revolutionary Marxism should be incorporated. So the present leadership should be replaced. That is number one. And number two, on the other hand, many of these radical cadres, they thought that India's revolution will take the path of Chinese revolution. Indian situation is largely similar to Chinese situation before revolution. And so, even in 1948, in Andhra thesis, the Andhra State Committee adopted a document, and the heading was, when I started my PhD thesis, I had to go through this long document. The heading was, China's road is our road. So even in 1948, even when the Chinese Revolution was had not fully attained its success, its victory, even in 1948, many Indian communist cadres were thinking in terms of Chinese road. And these two were equated, that parliamentary politics should be rejected, should be discarded, and revolutionary politics should be accepted. And this equidistance from Moscow and Peking, at the time Beijing was called Peking, equidistance of CPIM party from Moscow and Peking should be rejected as a line of opportunism. and instead pro-China, the road of Chinese revolution, of Mao Zedong's thought, should be accepted. So, revolutionary Marxism was equated to Mao Zedong, Chinese zone. That must be noted. And then there was the in Naxalbari area in Darjeeling district in 1955, there was a big movement of the tea plantation workers and the peasants. In 1966, we know throughout West Bengal there was series of food movements, many other movements, and in 1959 there was a firing killing around 80 peasants on the road streets of Calcutta by Bidhan Chandra Rai. He was the chief minister, his government. And in 65, 66 there was series of movements, and ultimately from 66 there was militant peasant movements were taking place in Darjeeling district. And what happened in 1967, 2nd March, so far I remember, the United Front government came to power. CPIM was a major partner to this government. And CPIM was formed in 1964 after the split from CPI. CPIM leadership gave tall promises of revolutionary politics. Many cadres were very much influenced by it. But during 1967, the cadres, the militant cadres, they were shocked to see that CPIM again practiced the sole objective of parliamentary politics, just like CPI. So the promises of revolution were belied, and for the second time the militant cadres were disillusioned. And right at this moment, the Darjeeling District Committee in North Bengal was guiding a militant peasant struggle. CPIM, before coming to power, promised to help and accelerate this peasant movement. But after they were installed in power, they were in a dilemma. On the one hand, the militant peasants and the militant cadres were pressurizing them, creating pressure on them, that you promised revolutionary mass movement, you help us, you take up the responsibility of taking forward the movement towards revolution. But unfortunately, CPIM was under pressure from the central government as well, and from the capitalist or semi-feudal economic system. So they were in a dilemma whether to support the Naxalbari peasant uprising, it was an armed uprising, or to suppress it by force, by military, by armed force, and remain in power. In the dilemma, they took the decision in favor of remaining in governmental power. Actually, in this time, March, April, May, I wrote a Bangla book. I am saying Bangla. I am deliberately trying to unlearn the British distortion of our language. In this Bangla book, I have written, I have done a very painstaking research to show that two poles, for the first time in Indian communist history, two opposite poles came very close to each other. First pole was the revolutionary upsurge of Naxalbari peasants, and the second pole was the parliamentary politics culminating in the governmental politics of CPIM. So one was revolutionary politics, other was parliamentary politics. These two poles came close and the division was very clear before the militant cadres. And so hence the 1967 made a clear distinction between the two politics. And a large section of Darjeeling District Committee, including Charu Majumdar, Kanu Sannal, Jongol Sautal, Souren Bosu, Mujibur Rahman, these people, Khokon Majumdar, under their leadership, a large section of the communist cadres and secondary leadership, they revolted against the CPIM, and very soon the All India Coordination Committee of Communist Revolutionaries was formed. It provided a platform for the radical communists who believed in revolutionary politics, armed peasant struggle, and the Chinese road. And in Sushital Rayochaudhuri joined it, a state committee member. Saroj Dotto joined it. I am talking about West Bengal because I don't know very much in detail, but in Andhra Pradesh I remember in the course of the movement, Tarimella Nagi Reddy, D.V. Rao, Chandrapula Reddy, many of the important communist leaders of Andhra Pradesh, they joined, and Sharaf from Jammu and Kashmir, and Satyanarayan Singh from Bihar, so many people. And what happened, that All India Coordination Committee provided a platform for debate and for coordinating such sporadic movements taking place in different parts of India. And in 1969 May, a new party was formed under the leadership of Charu Majumdar, that is called CPI-ML.
Je coupe, hein, 2 secondes. Vas-y, start.
So, when I criticize Charu Majumdar, at the same time I must appreciate that he built up this struggle, glorious struggle of the peasants, and gave efforts for a long time. He did not come abruptly. There is a long history of his association with peasant movement since his age of 16, 17 years. And he was a veteran communist leader, and he created a sense of rejection for the parliamentary politics, opportunist politics, politics hankering after power and greed. He created a kind of idealism, revolutionary idealism of sacrifice. That was great. And he taught to respect the peasants. That is very significant. The peasants whom we educated middle class people just humiliated every moment. Charu Majumdar said, go to the peasants, respect them, learn from their daily experience. Don't go to teach them, go to learn from them, learn from their life, learn from their culture, their values, their lifestyle, their revolutionary spirit, their suffering. Respect the peasants. These, a few aspects like these, for this I have great respect for him. And certainly there were many mistakes made by the Naxalites. But anyway, I am coming back to my own experience that at the age of 17 in 1974, I read the self-critical report of Satyanarayan Singh. I immediately responded to it very positively, favorably, and I joined. I joined as a whole-timer. I was instructed to stay at home, and I was given the responsibility of building up student movement because I was a student at that time. But I was ready to go to any working class front or peasant front. But CPIML told me, you do your work in Kolkata student front. And then I was organizing student movement. I was holding study circles. I was not the only one. There were many others, around 25-30 young boys and girls in Kolkata, very secretly, during emergency 1975, the terrible, horrible rule of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. At that time, we were doing this work. We were using some camouflage. In our college, we formed a Chhatra Oikko committee, something like that, Students' Unity Committee, something like that. Nobody knew that we were Naxalites. And the student wing of the Congress party at the time declared that no alive Naxalite is there outside the jail. And we were alive, we were Naxalites, we were outside the jail, but nobody knew that. This was emergency. After emergency 1971, the party changed its line. Satyanarayana Singh made a remarkable departure. Satyanarayana formed PCC, CPIML, Provisional Central Committee of the CPIML. It was a very big organization. Many Naxalites were freed from jail, and many of them joined PCC. PCC Central Committee merged with Unity Committee, and I had one experience of a meeting of Satyanarayana Singh, a closed door meeting with Chandrapula Reddy, and many others were there. And at the time, the change of policy was that let us take part in the elections. It was something which I greatly appreciated, because in the meanwhile, I was studying actually 3 years. I studied chemistry honors in Maulana Azad College and Vidyasagar College, and then my father retired. At the time I was studying a lot, very serious study of Marxism. Lenin's writings, Mao Zedong's full volumes. I realized that Mao Zedong said that for revolution, use every possible means. Mass organization, secret organization. Armed struggle, peaceful democratic struggle. Open work, secret work. Elections and extra electoral movements. And I was really very much surprised to see that Naxalites, after 1969, they boycotted mass election, mass organization, mass movement, everything. So they deviated from the teachings of Mao Zedong in the name of Mao Zedong thought. That is very important. Now Satyanarayana Singh, when he adopted the policy to participate in elections, I was very happy, and like me, many people were very happy. But many other Naxalite groups, splinter groups, they severely criticized Satyanarayana Singh and PCC, that they have become another CPIM, revisionist, neo-revisionist. They have deviated from the path of revolution.
Have you have to go. Have you any regret of that time? You seem very strong in your opinion. Have you any regret at all the time you have spent with the Naxalite movement?
Not at all. Just the opposite. That was the best time of my life. sharing things with my comrades. During the elections of Santosh Rana, I went to the village side in Gopiwallapur. And then during the Panchayat elections in 1978, I think next year, I went to Birbhum, Bolpur. For that short stay with the Adivasi people, Santal people, tribal people, poor peasants, I learnt a lot. I tried to unlearn. Today in postmodern, post-structuralist language, we often talk about unlearn what you have learned. Because what you have learned is controlled by power, discourse and power, the invisible power, what Michel Foucault said. Now I realize that I unlearned to some extent. The education system which taught me to insult the poor peasant, the black-skinned peasant, illiterate peasant, that wrong education could be unlearned. That is a major point, teaching of Naxalite movement. And then I also learned that actually I just cannot think of being repentant. I never regret. The thing is only that when the Naxalite groups were splintered, PCC was splintered, many of young cadres in Kolkata, we became disheartened. And after 1981, we all gave up politics, dissociated from Naxalite politics. It was certainly going backward. Certainly. If I had to regret for that, I will regret for. If I had to regret at all, I must regret for that. I came back. My father was a doctor in an Adivasi area in today's Jharkhand. He retired. And we had some financial problems. And at that time, I was mentally also very much collapsed. Failing to collect the strength, lacking in self-confidence. At that time, I then took up, in the meantime, I was studying political science because that was the only thing which I have studied during my Naxalite period. So I took up political science. I did my BA honors and I did my MA from Calcutta University, and I joined the Center for Studies in Social Sciences. I got a research scholarship there under Professor Partho Chatterjee. I did my PhD on Naxalite theory.
Yeah, you didn't yourself didn't take any refill or you didn't join any squad yourself?
Armed squad. No, not killing. In the village when I went there, the Jodhars, armed people, they were moving here and there, and we Naxalites, we were living in the tribal villages. Some of our friends also carried weapons, and so as to protect themselves. But I myself was not a member of any armed squad. I never attacked any person. I was attacked by Congress student wing in Vidyasagar College. I was severely beaten up during emergency, and after that 3-4 times. I was admitted in Medical College Hospital, treated there for 3-4 days. These things happened. One of my friends was one of my comrades was arrested at the time, and I took shelter in an unknown place. I also don't know who these people were. Some people took me there and I spent nights there. So I was never arrested.
Okay.
Never arrested. I have
Very last
yeah,
question.
last question. I have many other questions, but I will come to the last one.
আর এখন আমি কেন সরে এসেছি সেটা একটু বলি।
আচ্ছা।
হ্যাঁ, দ্যাট ইজ এ ভেরি ক্রুশিয়াল পয়েন্ট ফর মি। এটা আমার প্রেসিডেন্সি ওয়েবসাইটে লেখা আছে, ব্রিফলি, ভেরি ব্রিফলি।
Oh, please.
Regarding my present position, ideological position, I must tell you something. After being dissociated from Naxalite movement at the age of, in the year 1981, that means at the age of 24, I gradually became interested in Gramsci and Althusser. Althusser I did not understand much. Gramsci is easier. And if you are interested in Gramsci, Foucault is not far away. I gradually shifted to Michel Foucault, post-structuralism, and little bit of Jacques Derrida. And then I became interested in Foucault's concept of power. I studied seriously post-colonial theory of Edward Said, Homi Bhabha. I became interested in feminism, and I became interested in Ambedkarite theory of caste annihilation. So at this moment, if I look back, I can see that Naxalites were the most honest and persistent agents of fundamental social transformation in India. But their theory lacked gender sensibilities, caste sensibilities, the Adivasi question, the Foucauldian power perspective, Althusser's concept of ideology, Gramsci's concept of hegemony, ideological hegemony. These things should be incorporated into Naxalite theory to enrich the movement. Many sensibilities were absent in their ideology, although they were very honest, very dedicated, and very persistent agents of social transformation. And that is why in my life, present life, I have taken up this job. I have taken up to work for this gender and Naxalite movement. Another thing, I will publish caste and Naxalite movement. In this book, there are different discourses on Naxalite movement. And in this book, post-structuralist, post-colonial and subaltern perspectives. But I am editing these books, requesting other people to do research and write. I myself will also write. That is my present position, that there should be a meaningful dialogue between revolutionary Marxism on the one hand and post-structuralism, post-colonialism, feminism, Ambedkarite theory, Adivasi theory, anti-racism, feminism, etc. LGBTQIA+, their concern also should be addressed. That means, in other words, my position is that class struggle cannot be the only focus of movement, because it is not the only form of oppression. So class struggle should be combined with anti-caste, anti-environmental pollution, anti-gender oppression, anti-Adivasi oppression. All these forms of oppression are there, and they should be blended with class struggle. Only then a new movement, a new revolutionary movement can be built up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell you
Already
that
planned.
Naxalite movement was a very honest revolutionary movement, persistent agents of social transformation, but there were many drawbacks. I have mentioned you that boycott of election, boycott of mass organization, boycott of open forms of struggle, so many things. What Mao Zedong himself said, that we cannot miss any form of struggle. Revolution is a very difficult task, and if you want to go for a successful revolution, you should leave no stone unturned. You win over, if you want to behead the statue of Ram Mohan, you must explain to the people that what were the faults of Ram Mohan Rai, how was he associated with British colonial rule. Or can we have a dialectical evaluation, assessment? Ram Mohan Rai, on the one hand, he was fighting for feminist cause, gender equality. He was fighting for secular liberalism. On the other hand, he believed that British rule is a divine providence for India, a blessing for India. All these should be critically, dialectically, critically evaluated. You cannot reject Vidyasagar. That why Vidyasagar gave shelter to the British army during the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857. You have to understand the situation and what Vidyasagar did for women's emancipation, for struggle against superstitions of Hindu society, prejudices. His glorious role must be appreciated. Rabindranath, Mahatma Gandhi, for everyone, a Marxist should put the person in the historically specific context. And in that context, the plus and minus points should be pointed out. Only thus the evaluation could be done, as was pointed out by Lenin and Mao Zedong. But here, if you behead Vidyasagar's statue, you are creating a lot of adverse criticism among the people. First, you go to tell the people that this education teaches you to hate your own country people. It teaches you to hate manual labor. It teaches you to glorify intellectual labor. All these bourgeois values, feudal values, should have been discarded first through adequate ideological work. But it is a shortcut. You don't take up this laborious work. You don't do this historical study, research. You never do this. You just behead the statues. You destroy the laboratories and the schools and libraries. But why? You must explain this to the people, that what is the meaning of this feudal education, colonial education. So these were and the Khatam line. So far I have studied Mao Zedong, that when there is a people's court in the village, thousands of peasants have gathered, then the proceedings will be conducted, and the Joddar or a police officer will be prosecuted, and if his crimes are proved, only then the people's court can give a verdict to punish the person. But what Naxalites did here, An armed squad party took the decision, armed squad of 5 people took the decision that this police officer or this armed landlord is doing wrong things to the people. It is true that wrong things were done by police officers. Many notorious police officers were responsible for killing, rape, torture, encounter many dead bodies were seen floating in the Ganges, River Ganga. In Kashipur, Boranagar, mass genocide, Barasat took place. Areas were surrounded by hooligans and they were butchered. True, many, but the secret armed squad cannot take the decision for a whole people. That is anti-democratic. So, a revolutionary Marxism must respect democracy, must respect the principle of Mao Zedong, learn from the masses, go to the masses. And Charu Majumdar also said that, in spite of all his mistakes.
So,